this is TJR. I'm a musician and a music writer.
And my name is Robert Kinsler, and I'm a music writer and a musician.
And so we are here today to specifically discuss the 5.1 stereo mix that has been released on the deluxe edition. We're going to hold it up here real quick. On the deluxe edition, super deluxe edition, I forget which one we're calling it. 50th anniversary edition is what I'm going to call it.
Okay.
Of the Wine album. And now I've already, on my channel, I've done a review of the stereo mix. I did a review of the stereo mix. And I mostly said that Giles Martin kind of walked a fine line between bringing out more clarity, yet not losing the rawness of the White Album, basic kind of feeling. And I felt that mostly it worked. There were a few tracks where I felt where it didn't quite work, but mostly it works, and mostly it lets you hear things that you've never heard before. And I did say it was kind of like hearing it for the first time. But now this is the first time either of us have listened to the 5.1.
Right, the
surround sound mix. And so we're going to discuss that today. I feel like this is not going to be a long video as we start this. I think we can sum it up pretty concisely. Do you want to make any opening statements? It's just comparison between the stereo.
Well, let's start from a very general, broad view. They are different. I mean, you hear things differently. Obviously, everybody's system's differently. You know, whether you listen to it in your car, in a house, or in a room like a home theater setting, however you do it, you do hear different things on the very same track than you might hear, listening to a stereo version or the surround version. And I think it's exciting to hear both, especially if you're very familiar with the album like we are. I mean, it's probably if I had just one album on a desert island, I think this would be the album I would take. Matter of fact, I know it would be. It's such a expansive, freewheeling affair. It's just it's all over the map, all the different styles, and the Beatles are obviously drifting apart and all that stuff, but it's great. But I'll tell you, like we talked about, when you listen to the stereo mix, and then you listen to the surround mix, you just different things. Like I know, and one of the tracks I was listening to, all of a sudden I heard some drumming from Ringo. I think it was on "While My Guitar Gently Weeps," where it was really pronounced like he was kind of mirroring. I think it was either Clapton's guitar or George Harrison, but I heard some drumming and some specific things jumped out at me I had never heard before.
And this was on the surround sound.
On the surround mix, yeah, it was really exciting.
Yeah, it's interesting how, to me, in some cases, I liked the stereo, the new stereo mix on certain tracks over the 5.1 surround, because I felt like the stereo had a beefier tone to it. And I've sometimes experienced this, like for instance, I experienced this with the mono version of Please Please Me versus its stereo version. I'm referring to the 2009 remasters is what I'm referring to here. The mono version of Please Please Me has a beefier tone, even though it doesn't have the clarity that the stereo remaster has. It doesn't have quite that clarity. I feel like the mono has just more beef, and I appreciate it more for that reason.
Yeah.
And in some cases, on certain tracks, the stereo remix in this 50th anniversary edition has more beef versus the 5.1 surround. However, the 5.1 surround really delineates, like here's the guitar, here's the bass, here's the drums, and it's almost like you're hearing them in like separate audio strands coming, through different parts, So in some cases, it's like if you wanted to like study what each person was playing with more clarity and detail, this is not a bad way to do it.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I could see that. Yeah, especially you're a musician, and you really want to hear, like, let's say While My Guitar Gently Weeps again, you want to hear what Clapton's doing there, because both what I will say about this 50th anniversary release is it blows away the previous releases as far as hearing some of those subtleties and the individual musician, things going on. I mean, this is not like some of the modern day recordings where they almost don't want you to hear the individual instruments. It's more kind of the feel of the production. I mean, this is very much about what each player brings to the table, and you really do hear that in glorious detail here.
You hear that in more detail in the stereo mix, but you probably will hear it in even more detail on the surround.
Yeah, yes, so.
But sometimes hearing that level of detail can take away, in some cases, the overall impact.
I agree with that.
In some cases. However, though, there are some tracks tracks where on the surround sound mix, I know both of us kind of looked at each other and went, wow. You know, because we
Yeah.
heard things in a way that we hadn't heard before. I know there was one track, I can't remember which one, but where we just heard some background vocals. And I think this is more apparent when the Beatles get more hi-fi on the White Album, which they do on a few tracks, where you're just hearing those ahs, you know, those beautiful harmonies that they do. And I really felt on the surround sound like it was just flying over my head, almost as if their voices were like birds,
Yeah.
you know, moving over my head. And, it was like, and I remember like thinking, whoa, that was awesome.
You know what? It kind of replicates for those of you that have been to the Love performance in Vegas, where they, I think Giles and George Martin both kind of established that theater for that, and I know they did a mix of that soundtrack. That's for that
Yeah.
Circus Soleil thing. And the first time I heard that, I was just, it's like I had never heard the Beatles music sound like that. Obviously, you're listening to it in a multi-million-dollar theater setting, but the mix and some of these things going, and it's amazing to replicate some of that wow factor in your home, what you can do, I think, with what Giles Martin has done here. I mean,
Yeah.
some of those moments, like you're talking a few times, like whether it's Ringo's drumming or Eric Clapton's guitar, or these amazing shimmering vocal harmonies that just fly by. I mean, it's an amazing way to re-experience the White Album.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've like I said, I have strongly felt, just like with the Sgt. Pepper remix, that it gives you a whole new way to listen to it. It does not replace the original stereo or mono mixes, which are readily available. It doesn't replace them. But to me, the stereo remix of Sgt. Pepper was a revelation. It was allowing me to hear it the way I always remembered it. When I would remember Sgt. Pepper prior to the remix of last year, I would always remember it bigger and fuller than it actually really was. Now, when I play the remix, it's as big and full as my memory remembers it, and
again,
that makes
I find,
sense.
And again, I find myself in total agreement with you. That's so well stated. I mean, it's such the new remix allows you really to hear it, you know, as I think it was intended to be heard.
I agree.
You know, and just because of the limitations of the day, but now all the, you know, it's amazing the work they've put into
Yes.
these new
If it were
re-releases.
mixed today, this is how it would sound.
That's right.
I always feel about it. And I feel the same way about the White Album. Mostly, I would say 90% of the time, it works. It works brilliantly. I'm talking just the stereo. And I would say the surround sound, once again, depending on your system, of course, you know, everybody thinks their system's the best. But in the surround sound, I think, for me, there are moments when I prefer the stereo, unless I want to listen really analytically. And I know that there are people who are not musicians who also like to listen analytically and really like to just delineate that. But there are other times when the surround has a certain wow factor that the stereo doesn't. So it's once again, it's just another option. They have their pros and cons, in my opinion. The Blu-ray, of course, you can only listen to on your Blu-ray player. Unless you have a Blu-ray player in your car. Do they even make Blu-ray players for cars?
I've never heard of that. Maybe
Yeah, I
I'm
remember-
sure somebody has one in their
Yeah.
car, but I don't.
But you know, but once again, but just like I said, I think the Blu-ray is, like I said, it's for real serious listening.
Yeah, it
The
is.
Blu-ray.
Yeah, you almost feel like, oh, I got to be quiet and I mean, now's the time. It's like when you sit down and watch a movie, you really want to immerse yourself in it, and that's kind of what it does too. It does, you know, makes you almost again listen to these with fresh, you know, these recordings with fresh ears and a fresh approach, you know, which is exciting when it's something as great as this.
And somewhere there's a topic there. I think there's a real topic there about how we listen to music now versus how we listened to it 20, 30, 40 years ago. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I know growing up as a kid, when I put on an album, I listened. I sat there and listened. I put the headphones on and was immersed in this theater in my mind as I listened to it. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe that was just me. Maybe the
It
rest of the
almost
world
ties
listened
in.
differently.
It's almost like the bookend part of our discussion now, going to concerts today. I mean, people always gone and partied and cheered and stuff, but now I go to so many concerts, not all of them, but I go to so many concerts where seemingly no one is paying attention except for to their phone, going on beer runs. And I know we've talked about this
Yeah.
on a few episodes before, but the same can be said for this. When I really am into an album, really into listening to maybe something like this, I do really want to listen to it and immerse myself in it. And I'm glad that, you know, still, we live in a world where we can do that, at
Yeah.
least in the privacy of our own home.
I think they're both immersive experiences. Both this new stereo remix and this 5.1.
I agree.
They're both immersive, but immersive in different ways.
Very much so.
And so I would say at this point, let us know what you think. Have you listened to both? This has been out now for a few weeks. What are your thoughts between the stereo remix and the 5.1 surround sound mix? What are your thoughts? And share us, if there were any moments for you as you listened to it, certain songs that stood out for you, pros and cons. As always, if you like what we're doing, please click like, click subscribe, and click notifications so you can know when we release new videos. And if you'd like to help us make more videos, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter. As little as $1 a month can make just a huge, huge difference. And there's, of course, going to be a link overhead. There'll be a link in the description. And everybody, just thank you so much for watching.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.